Hello, math students. Welcome back to our module called Area, Surface Area, and Volume Problems. This is lesson 4, and it is called Nets and Surface Area. Our goal for today is, we will identify nets and the three-dimensional figure they make and figure out the surface area. All right, so the question that I want you to think about in this lesson is, what do nets do to help you? Okay, so there's some things that we need to remember in order to understand surface area and nets. And the 6th grade standard says that you have to be able to look at a net and then in your mind fold it up and tell what three-dimensional figure would be formed if you folded it up and put it back together. And so doing that, we have to be able to learn to identify a net by what it looks like when it's all spread out. So the first thing that you have to do is this right here is a net. If you didn't know what a net is before, today, one of the ways that I like to help kids remember what nets are is think about your favorite cereal box. If you had a favorite cereal box, and let's say it had a character that you were madly in love with that you wanted to keep forever, sometimes what we can do with those cereal boxes is we can take our finger along the seam where they were glued and we can unglue it with our hand. And when we do that, if we unglue each seam and then lay it out flat, you're going to see something that looks like a net, okay? Because when we fold up this, it is going to turn back into a cereal box or a shoe box or what we would call a right rectangular prism. The reason why we know this is because that prisms always, well, I should be careful how I say always. If it is a 6-sided net, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, then they will always fold up into a rectangle, okay? If you have a triangular prism, however, you would have the front and the back, right? But then you would only have 3 pieces in the middle, so it would have 5 faces. Right rectangular prisms have 6 faces. Triangular prisms have 5 faces. So it really does help to be able to count the faces that you see because that helps you determine what kind of shape it is. So since I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, I know that this figure right here is a right rectangular prism. So we're going to put right rectangular prism because that's what this net is, okay? And then it says, explain how you know. Well, the way we know is that there are 6 faces, okay? And the 6 faces tell us. This one says back view, this says front view. So I want you to envision that you're holding this box, and here's the front, and then here is the back, okay? And so that's the front and that's the back. This is, if you folded it in, then this would be the left side, this would be the right side, and then this would be the top, and this would be the bottom. And so it really helps you be able to visualize what it looks like when it's all folded up, okay? So then it says, how do you know how much space is covered? Well, that's not difficult because all you have to do is you have to visualize the shapes that are made when you have your net. So this right here is a rectangle, which is the same size as this rectangle, which is the same size as this rectangle, which is the same size as this rectangle. So I have 4 rectangles right there that are all the same size. And then I have these 2 little rectangles that are still rectangles, but they're smaller. So these are also rectangles. And now for me, this is really, really easy to be able to figure out how much space is covered because the only shapes that I have to worry about are rectangles. And I know that in order to find the area of a rectangle, all I have to do is length times width. So basically, I have to take length times width for this one. So this would be length times width. This one would be length times width. This one would be length times width. This one would be length times width, right? This one down here, the little guy, would still be length times width and length times width. So as you can see, every one of those rectangles, all we have to do is find the length times the width. So that's really not that difficult. So basically what you're going to do is you are going to take the length times width of every rectangle that you see, and then you're going to add them together. So let's try this. What if I did, this is number 1, this is number 2, this is number 3, this is number 4, this is number 5, and this is number 6. Okay, we just numbered our rectangles. So in order to figure out the space covered, then I would take number 1's length times width, right? Number 2's length times width. Number 3's length times width. Number 4's length times width. Number 5's length times width. And number 6's length times width. After I find that, then I'm just going to take all of those amounts and add them together, and then I have the surface area of the box. Okay, and that gives me all of the space covered on the surface of the box. So it's surface area. So when you're finding surface area, your units of measure, so surface area, the word has area in it, so all of your units of measure are squared, because you're only multiplying two things together. Look, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. I'm only multiplying two things together. And when you only multiply two things together, you have to use squared. So it would be centimeters squared, inches squared, feet squared, meters squared. Okay? So that's how we find surface area. It really is easy as long as you can keep track of all of your parts. Okay? So the next thing that it says that we have to be able to do is we have to be able to draw a net for this guy. Okay, so basically what I like to do is draw it just like this one. Okay, so I know that I have a front view, right? That's what it says in the one up above. So this is the front view. So I am going to write front view. This is my front right here, right? So if that's my front, then my back view is going to be not this one, but the one that we can't see. So I have to account for the one that's right next to it. And then we have to account for the one on the back that we can't see. So this is the back view. Okay, well that makes sense. So here's the front. Here's this little piece right here. So we're going to call that left side view, right? So this is the left side, right? And then we can't see this one, so over here, same size as the left side, has to be the right side, right? That wasn't too hard. And then we have a top, which looks like this. So this is the top view, right? So this is the top. And then underneath it, which we can't see, is the bottom view. And now we have drawn our very first net. Okay, and how do we know if we drew our net correctly? How many faces does a right rectangular prism have to have? We know that it has to have 6. A left, a right, a front, a back, a top, a bottom. That's 6. So left, right, front, back, top, bottom. They're all right there. So it's not really hard to draw nets. And mine's a little bit wiggly, so yours can be too, and it's okay, as long as we understand what it's supposed to look like. Now, this might not be the exact way that you do it all the time. That's okay. You just have to remember that you have to have all the parts drawn. So you have to have the top and the bottom, you have to have the front and the back, you have to have the left and the right, okay? So that's the important thing about knowing how to draw a net correctly. You have to draw a surface space for every piece, even if you can't see it, okay? So that's kind of fun. And then the next thing that it tells us to do is now we have to find the surface area of the figure. Okay, well, if we remember what we did before, we came up with a little plan that, in my opinion, is very, very helpful. So we're going to label all of the pieces. So again, let's say that this is number 1, this is number 2, this is number 3, this is number 4, this is number 5, and this is number 6. So if we said we have to find the area of number 1, well, it says bottom and top. So we're looking at this one is number 3 right here, and then left side was number 5 here, and then front side is number 2. Okay, so that helps us figure out our dimensions. So if we remember, this right here is 2 centimeters. That's what this one is, okay? This one, how tall it is for all of them, is 5 centimeters. That's from here to here, so how tall it is. And then how long it is, if you're looking at this is the front, this would be 8 centimeters according to the drawing, okay? So 8 and 5, no, sorry on that one. That one is actually 2. So this would be 8 and 2, right? Because it's talking about this side that it's attaching to. So 2 and 5. This is 5. This is 5. This is 5. And this is 5. And we're talking about centimeters, right? So then this one has to be 8 centimeters. That's already labeled as 2 and 5. This one has to be 8 centimeters. And this is attaching here, so this is actually 2 centimeters. Okay, I think we have all of them labeled. This one is 8 centimeters. Okay, all right, I think we've got them all labeled now. Okay, so number 1, what are the 2 dimensions that we see on it? So number 1 equals 8 times 2, right? Length times width. Number 2, it says 8 times 5, right? And then number 3 says 8 times 2. And then number 4 says 8 times 5. Okay, so far so good. Then we have number 5, which says 2 times 5. And number 6 says 2 times 5. Okay, so that wasn't so bad, right? Now we can figure them out. So 8 times 2 is 16. 8 times 5 is 40. 8 times 2 is 16. 8 times 5 is 40. 2 times 5 is 10. And 2 times 5 is 10. Okay, so we figured out the area for each one of our rectangles. And now it said we had to add them together. So I'm going to take 16 plus 40 plus 16 plus 40 plus 10 and plus 10. And I'm going to add all of those together. Well, if I add these 2 together, then I get 56. If I add these 2 together, I get 56. If I add these 2 together, I get 20. And then 6 plus 6 is 12. Regroup the 1, that's 10, 11, 12, 13. So I get 132 centimeters squared because I only multiplied 2 things together. And we're finding surface area. So my answer has to be centimeters squared. Okay? So, tricky? Kind of. The only thing that's tricky about it is trying to make sure that your dimensions represent what you're given. Okay, so that's the only part that got a little bit tricky, but you got to pay attention to what you're doing. Okay, so once we figured out what the dimensions were, we were able to find the areas of each one of our faces, and then we added them all together, and we got 132 centimeters squared. So the best advice that I can give you about trying to find surface area is, first of all, label everything. Second of all, label your dimensions correctly. And then third of all, take your time and find the area of each face so that you can add them together and get the correct surface area. And then remember, surface area, you're only multiplying 2 things together, so your units of measure have to be squared. Okay? All right, so let's go back to our goal for today. Today we will identify nets, we did that, and the 3-dimensional figure that they make, and figure out the surface area, which we did. We did all of those things. We were very busy. What do nets help you do? For me, what a net helps me do is it helps me know what kind of 3-dimensional shape that I'm using. It also helps me figure out all of the faces so that when I have to find the area of each face, I know what I'm looking at. Okay? All right, kiddos, that's all I have for you in this video. I'll talk to you soon. Bye!